Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Shochu'sday number 45. I'm Stephen Lyman, one of your most frequent co-hosts. Obviously, Christopher Pellegrini is on here hosting most of the time, and then I'm joining him. But today he's off. He's got the day off. He's flying back from Okinawa to Tokyo today, so I told him I'd take over the stream. And we've got our first guest on this new format. We had a few guests on our Instagram Live, but here with StreamYard, where we're now going to Facebook and YouTube as live streams and then archived in those places. This is my first time hosting, so I'm learning this new interface, which I know you've seen Christopher struggle with at times, so hopefully I can get through this without messing anything up or crashing the internet. And I'm really excited. We've got a special guest today, Mac from Kanpai Planet, who I'll introduce in a few minutes. We'll just be talking about what he's doing and his interest in Japanese drinks and his journey and that sort of thing. And I'll get to know him a little bit. I've met Mac a few times, but we haven't really had a chance to talk about these sorts of things before. Just a little housekeeping. We actually, Christopher and I were judges for the Omori Time Reel contest, and the winner won a trip to Okinawa. The winner was announced this morning, New York time. And it was a really nice reel. There were, I think, 3 or 4 that I thought were really high quality. And if I had to pick a winner, I think the winner was chosen. Of my favorites, I'd say this was the most creative and the most interesting. So really go check that out. Hashtag Awamori Time on Instagram. I think they have a website as well, which I believe is itsawamoritime.com, possibly. I should have looked that up before the show. But yeah, look for them. Really clever people put together reels. These are all just usual people who wanted to go to Okinawa, and somebody's going. So congratulations to them. Also, we had a new episode of the podcast out this week. We haven't done almost any promotion for it yet, so you may not be aware, but it's episode number 9. We dig into Shochu, which, of course, this is Shochu'sday. It's near and dear to our hearts, but Shochu is actually much more confusing in Japan than people realize, because Shochu means distilled alcohols. And so really almost anything could be referred to as Shochu, and the government has a number of different categories that all get clustered into Shochu as the broad category, and then breaks down into smaller ones. So check out that episode. It should be in the feed now for the podcast feed. And I think that's all I had to go over. So why don't we bring in Mac from Kanpai Planet. And Mac, welcome to the show.
Absolutely fantastic to be here, Stephen. I like the way you say Mac from Kanpai Planet as if it's, a real planet, a real location. Here I am,
Yeah, that was clever branding on your part, I think.
We've all had a lot of time during the last year, I think, to do some things we've dreamt of. And one of the things I did was rewatch all of the Godzilla movies right from the beginning, from 1954. And there's one of the films where they have a Venusian, a person from Venus. And I learned the Japanese word kinseijin, which means a person from Venus. And so I feel like there needs to be like, a kanpai se, I think that's a t-shirt idea in the making. And
there you go.
Kanpai seijin.
I like that. I see you're wearing your Mac Planet t-shirt.
Sure.
So your previous efforts, and I guess you're probably still going to be doing this once time or the world allows, reality allows, doing tourism work in Tokyo. Is that right?
Yeah, sure. So since the start of 2017, that's been my job, my main job. And I say that because I know a lot of people actually in Japan, a lot of tour guides do it either as a side hustle or maybe something, into retirement. But yeah, my primary job is guiding and running a travel company called Mac Planet. Which has been, I've got to say, been an amazing success. Our guests have been incredible. So like every venture, started off in February 2017 and took a little while to build up. It was maybe the end of that year that it became a full-time concern. And then by 2019, it was a lot of fun. I think I guided something insane, like 300 days of the year, on average, 10 hours a day. So a lot of plantar fasciitis, actually. You also get through a lot of shoes, which luckily are a tax-deductible expense when you're a sole proprietor and a tour guide.
I hadn't thought about that. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
Very interesting.
I hope you're putting through all your drinks as well, and your drink
Sure.
with your company.
Of course. Yeah, that's sort of the fun part when I can write off meals and bar visits.
Yeah.
Now, so you've been in Japan for how long?
This will be I'll be celebrating my 15th anniversary this August. So since the middle of 2006.
Okay. And Tokyo the whole time, or have
Yeah.
you lived in other parts of the
No,
country?
and not just Tokyo the whole time, Shibuya-ku the whole time. A few different locations here and there, but yeah, I'm a Shibuya Jin or Shibuya Shushin, I guess. I really, I love Tokyo. I mean, people often ask, why are you in Tokyo? It's very simple. It's the greatest city on earth, as I like to put in the marketing literature, the world's greatest metropolis. And I'm very lucky. I've visited 108 countries, all 7 continents. And, I say nothing would make me happier. Maybe now that I'm so established here, it would be a real ass if this happened. But there was a period where nothing would have made me happier than traveling to a new country and actually falling in love with that city and thinking, okay, this is better, whatever that means to you, than Tokyo, and moving. But that's why I'm here. It's just, for me, it's the greatest city on earth.
That's a sound endorsement for Tokyo for sure. I mean, I spent 17 years in New York City, and for me, that was the greatest city on earth. And when I visited Tokyo, actually, I felt overwhelmed as a New Yorker.
Wow.
It's so sprawling. It's such a big megalopolis.
Yeah.
It never ends. And, New York City, essentially, you can argue it has 2 downtowns, right? There's the Midtown Financial District, and then there's the actual downtown Wall Street area. And those are the 2 sort of, towering skyscraper parts of the city. And there's now an area growing up in Brooklyn, but that's basically New York City. It's 2 downtowns. Yeah. Tokyo's got like 8.
Yes. At least, at least.
Right. Yeah. It was just mind-boggling. And the first time I visited, the train systems weren't linked, right, for all the different various subway lines.
Right.
And so you couldn't use the same ticket. You had to
pre-sweep
tickets. Yeah. So I was like, how do people live here? This is insane. But I've grown to love it as well. Although the city that turned my head away from New York City wasn't Tokyo. It was actually Fukuoka, which is where I'm based now. And so I've been fortunate enough to be able to make a similar decision where we get to live in what I consider the greatest city on earth. It's definitely not the greatest metropolis, because it's not a metropolis. It's a nice medium-sized city, and it's very, very livable. Great food, great weather, very convenient. So
100%.
Made a little bit different decision.
Well, you liked Fukuoka, I think, for the same reasons I like Tokyo. And you can imagine, this is a well-rehearsed answer, but what is it that we both love, right? I think it's 5 things. For me, it's like the Maslov or the Maxian hierarchy of metropolitan needs, right? So at the bottom, you've got the safety and you've got the efficiency. And they may be super dull for people, but they're so important for me. I mean, the fact you can anytime, we've talked about this so much, right, living here, but any time of the night, right? Any of my female guests, tour guests, or my female friends here, just really not, listen, unfortunately, human beings live here and bad things happen, but I'm not concerned in the same way that I'm concerned at 3 a.m. in, say, London, right? The efficiency, things work here,
Sure.
With the tax year ending soon, I've been ordering a lot of stuff, and just once again reminded that you can specify this insanely tight window for delivery is just incredible. And then, so once you have those 2 foundations of kind of safety and efficiency, then what is life about, right? People, food, and culture. And by culture, I mean things to do. And that's, I think, probably why you love Fukuoka and I love Tokyo to the different scale.
I think that's absolutely right. And I would just argue that things are more efficient in Fukuoka because I am 20 minutes from the airport.
That is, when you started talking before, I was going to mention that myself, and they've extended it by 5 minutes. But the first time I went to Fukuoka in February 2007, the check-in deadline if you didn't have luggage for domestic flights was 15 minutes. I think it's now a horrific 20 minutes, right?
That's right.
And so I remember like arriving 17 minutes, which meant I had to get on the subway here, which meant I left the Ichiran Honten at something like 28 minutes before my flight, wolfing down this bowl of ramen to you just swanned in, boom, boom, touch, no problem, and you get away. So that is one thing I am jealous of Fukuoka, that your airport is so close.
Yeah, it really is. It's an incredibly convenient airport, and then it's either 5 or 6 minutes from the airport to the main train station, to Hakata Station. So you're at the Shinkansen in 5 minutes. It's crazy. So great, really convenient place.
To Nagasaki, and I know you do a lot of work down in Kagoshima and
that's right,
Kumamoto and places. So
that's right. Yeah, it's 30 minutes to Kumamoto City. It's an hour and 20 to Kagoshima City, and then obviously going the other way up to Hiroshima is pretty quick. So yeah, it's nice. But yeah, Tokyo is fantastic as well. Now, I knew you were going to do something in drinks. Christopher had mentioned it to me, but when Kanpai Planet dropped, I was really excited for one thing. I think having more people amplifying the beauty of these drinks is wonderful. And for it to be somebody that Christopher and I already knew was even better. And you and I actually first met at a Tokyo Swallows game. I know Christopher hates calling them the Yakult Swallows, so we'll go with the Tokyo Swallows.
Yes, the Swallows.
Yeah,
I went to their mid-series this weekend and we lost all 3 games, and they're terrible. So anyway, we met in happier times, I think, right? In happier times when they were a little bit more successful.
That's right. Yeah, I was at the pennant clinching game against the Giants with you guys. That was a lot of fun. Yeah. But then I think the last time I saw you was you and Christopher used to co-host a Hanami party, right? Cherry Blossom party.
Yeah. And
I think it was 2018. I attended, and I think that was the last time I actually saw you in person. So I apologize. Yeah. No, my book release party. You came to that.
Yeah, the your book release, which was absolutely fantastic.
That was October 2019. So it's still been over a year.
Yeah, well, I mean, for obvious reasons, which is I mean, just such a shame. But we'll talk about happier matters. By the way, Stephen hasn't paid me to say this at all, but for those of you who haven't read The Complete Guide to Japanese Drinks, you absolutely should. It's absolutely fantastic. Incredibly comprehensive. Just when I was about to think, oh yeah, it would be good if this particular story was mentioned, or this particular aspect of the history of Japanese wine, Japanese whiskey, and our indigenous drinks as well, came up. There it was in a little cutaway box. Be it Takamine process, or the history of Muscat Bailey A. So very comprehensive. And if you haven't got it, it is $25. Very, very well spent. So fantastic. So yeah, that was the last time we met. And we used to host a Hanami party. So I started Mac Planet in February 2017, and I had this real vision. It's a vision actually it's worth talking about, because it's basically the same driver as what I'm doing now with Kanpai Planet. I just had this real passion to want to share my passion for Tokyo, which I hope has already come across, with the world. And in a number of different ways, right? So not just the touring, actually. The Mac Planet kind of social media and content creation empire is actually pretty comprehensive. There's a pretty active YouTube channel for that. We have a radio show, actually. It's now hosted primarily by what we refer to as Mac Planet's resident DJ, Royce Leong. He once every couple of weeks puts out an episode, 30 minutes. So if you just mixcloud.com/MactionPlanet, 6 Japanese songs, and then some cultural commentary or talk about the artist or whatever's relevant, the theme for the episode, whatever it is, around those 6 songs, So all of it just driven by this, desire to share the passion for this place with the rest of the world. But of course, because, rent needs to be paid for and nobody's giving us whiskey or shochu for free, then I needed to make some money, and kind of the touring part was the financial arm of that business. So I met Chris. I actually interviewed him for the Mixcloud channel. And I said to him, look, I want to do something big to celebrate Hanami seasons coming up. Let's do something. Let's get some draft craft beer in the park, and let's give everybody some unlimited shochu to drink. And he said yes, as you know. Why wouldn't he? It's a fantastic idea. And it was a huge success. And so we repeated that in 18 and 19. And we would have repeated it last year and this year. So put it in your I think we've already set a date.
Have you?
Yeah, for next year. So I'm confident that we will be able to hold.
Confident.
Yeah, 27. I know, famous last words. But if we're all vaccinated and we can run this safely, then the 27th of March, 2022. Please join us in Yoyogi Park, where we will be serving draft bed beer and unlimited shochu and awamori, and maybe some nihonshu too from me and Chris.
The date again was the 27th of March, is that right?
Yes, Sunday, the 27th of March, 2022.
I'm just making a banner for that so people can
Fantastic. Never before have we promoted so early.
That's right.
But we would love to see you there. It's an absolutely fantastic event. Me and Chris are there at like 5:30 a.m. off the first trains to get, the prime spot. You remember, that's right. There in the main part of Yoyogi Park, and it's just so much fun. We always bill it as like 3 hours, sort of 12 till 3 or maybe 12 till 4.
Mm-hmm.
It's never 3 or 4 hours, is it? It's
no.
As long as you want, we're basically being kicked out of the park at some point.
Yeah, it's dangerous. I speak from experience. I mean, between Christopher pouring some of my favorite shochu and then the Baird beer on draft, and you guys, you cut out a big swatch of land. There's a lot of real estate for people to come and hang out, bring their blankets, bring some food. It's a really fun event. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, we do. We because people are obviously paying for a ticket, and we want them to be in full comfort. So we state what we want, and then maybe as we find out how much people need, then we return that real estate back into common use. But we've made a lot of friends as well by kind of what we do as well, and I always make sure to order a little bit extra beer, and then obviously people are just curious what we're doing. I mean, nobody else has draft beer, let alone draft craft beer.
Right.
So it is a lot of friends are made, a lot of good. I mean, I hate the word networking, but anyway, you can view it like that as well. So it's a fantastic event.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Tom Kretschmar actually came from New York to attend the 2019 version. I unfortunately couldn't make it, but
he timed his trip for it. Well, a bit of both. We'd met Tom, and we all know, obviously, Tom. He's a big supporter of what both of us do, and he's an absolutely fantastic guy. And I think we sort of timed the event actually kind of around his trip. Chris had mentioned this guy, a few people may be coming over from New York. And then certainly the original dates for the 2020 trip were also timed around his ability to get here. So see, that's what happens. That's what I like. Like if it's very, very important. I truly appreciate all the support. And I never forget, people, whether it's taking a tour with me or whether it's just as simple as retweeting something that I've done. It's always up here, and always trying to find a way to repay that kindness.
Sure. Well, and that's you and I touched on this as we were talking before the show that you and I come from a different generation. Social media is not in our DNA, and self-promotion is not in our DNA. So it's a learning curve, isn't it? Remembering to promote things that you've created. Yeah,
it's interesting, right? I've noticed that with what you guys, are doing. Absolutely fantastic podcast with Japan Distilled, and another non-pay. You know, you have to now, speaking of promotion, you have to put whether it's a paid promotion now. You know, if Kirin, for example, ever end up sending me some whiskey, right, then I have to say, you know, this is, even if I trash talk it, I have to say this is a paid promotion. I got these samples. So this is a not paid promotion. Japan Distilled, fantastic podcast. But I do notice that you're not as forthcoming about when a new episode drops as
that's right.
And for me, it's been the same, right? I mean, you know, right now, the primary outlet for Kanpai Planet is YouTube in terms of like the main content. And very good.
Yeah,
exactly right. And but I've been making videos for the Mac Planet YouTube channel for 4 years now, and especially over the last 4 months, I took on this kind of 12-week challenge where I made a different video every week for 12 weeks. And you make these videos, and you know, to produce 10 minutes of watchable content on video takes it takes days to do it well. And then on top of that, of course, nobody knows how incredible, you know, that shot of B-roll that you spent 2 hours agonizing over, that's actually only 4 seconds long, or those transitions that you worked on for hours and hours. Nobody knows unless they click, and the only way they click is with the information they have, which is the thumbnail, you know, the picture, and then the title. And so this has kind of almost become as, if not more important than the video itself. And it's definitely something I'm learning about. It's getting easier, but it is very, very difficult. And the thing about video, you see, I do a lot of blogging, and a blog post, for example, a blog post once a week on the Mac Planet blog. It takes me 2 or 3 hours to write. Sure. And it's kind of fun, and get to do a little bit of research in it, and kind of like acts as a diary of my life for the last few years. So if 10 people read it, if 100 people read it, it's okay. But if I've spent 2 days on a video, I mean, of course, I want people to watch. Why else was I making it? You know, I sure. want people to watch it. I want people to enjoy it. I'm proud of my work. So, yeah, but not being 18 years old, it's definitely a world that I think we're still wrestling with, right?
Sure, absolutely. And I was very impressed with your first videos for Kanpai Planet. Again, now this is not paid advertising. I think your work is really, really good. I was very, very impressed for you right out of the gate. And obviously it was your experience with Mac Planet that I think prepared you to come out of the gate so strong with your Kanpai Planet videos. But, you know, really timely episodes on, you know, the new whiskey labeling standards, and really clear. You know, you just lay things out in such a straightforward way that I think is really easily digestible. And I love the graphics that you throw in, that, you know, your B-roll basically. You know, I know some of that's stock footage and some of it's, you know, things you've shot yourself, but it's all really, really well done. So I was really impressed with the production quality. So people should definitely check it out. Kanpai Planet on, where can we find that? That's on YouTube? Does it live elsewhere?
Yeah. One of the things, whenever I start a new project, that's important for me is to try to own kind of the social media tag consistently. Yeah. You know, none of this, I'm Chris Pellegrini on this, and I'm Christopher Pellegrini on that. I'm like, bloody hell.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, what I mean, it's almost coincidental that Kanpai Planet is called Kanpai Planet and Mac Planet is called Mac Planet. With some hindsight, and I'll say this because, you know, I've always tried to be extremely honest when talking about business, because there's so much BS out there, and so many people want to start their projects, but they want the true reality, right, of what it's like. So with some hindsight, Mac Planet may not have been called Mac Planet. So Kanpai Planet, I think, is a sensible name for a project which is about the world of Japanese drinks, or maybe to be more precise, Japan's drinks, but you know, Japanese drinks is a little bit more catchy for now. Mac Planet may not be, with hindsight, the most sensible name for essentially a Tokyo and Japan tour company. But anyway, we stuck with it, and luckily things have worked. And, you know, in 2019, I was guiding a Wimbledon champion and a Bond girl and the president from Homeland and some heads of state and stuff. So, you know, it seems to have worked out. But
it sounds like it.
Yeah. So anyway, so long story short, we're Kanpai Planet everywhere. YouTube.com/Kanpai Planet, Twitter.com/Kanpai Planet, Facebook.com/Kanpai Planet. All one word, and no dots and no underscores. So please go and check us out. All on them.
Yeah. There we go. YouTube.com/Kanpai Planet. That's probably the easiest place to access the videos anyway. And they're really well made.
And without wishing to sound like, I always say like a teenager, but actually there's plenty of older individuals doing great work on YouTube. But please, subscribe and click the bell icon for all notifications. Did you hear the story about it did the rounds on Twitter? A mother, a Japanese mother, tweeted that her 2-year-old kid watched so much YouTube that when he left the room, you know how you might say, "See you later" or "goodbye." He used to say, "Please subscribe to my channel." And because he watched so much YouTube, that's how he thought normal human beings signed off from any situation, including like just hanging out with other people. And then, right, to people he really liked, like his grandma, he would add, "Please leave a comment." And so this did the rounds, and some of the bigger Japan kind of commentary Twitter feeds got hold of this and quote tweeted it with a translation, and this like went viral. And then she had to. So I actually mentioned it at the end of this 12-week project I've touched on the Mac Salman Planet YouTube. I made a video called 8 Things I Learned from 12 weeks intensive weeks on YouTube. And it was about asking for the sub. And I thought this was a great story to mention. So I went to get the screenshot for my B-roll. And the lady had restricted her tweets. Because I think so many people had waded in with hopefully mostly positive comments about what an incredibly amazing story this was.
That is pretty amazing. It's a new world, isn't it?
Absolutely. So please do subscribe. And why? For me right now, the subscription is important because I have to get to 1,000 subscriptions before I am able to start monetizing the channel. That's just YouTube's rules. I also need 4,000 watch hours of content within a rolling 12-month period. So please, everybody, just go and put those videos on repeat. And it'll make me very happy.
Sure. Yeah, no, they're great videos. Definitely encourage everybody to go check them out after this show. Please finish watching this show first. And Christopher and I went in a different direction. We decided to go with a podcast, and that was we do want to create video content, but it's going to be more things like this where it's a conversation, right? It's a discussion, minimal editing, I guess, just to get information out there and have people get to know things and people, and things like Kanpai Planet, that they can get more designed content. I guess design might not be the right word, but as you said, you spend days editing.
A good example actually is I put out an episode. The third video I put out was called "What is Japanese Whiskey?" And that came out, and then I think 5 days later you dropped your podcast, which was about similar subject matter. And I thought that was fantastic because it was kind of, what I could do in 8.5 minutes. And the thing about video, if you're doing it right, and we're always learning, but if you want to make good video, I mean, you learn that you cut, there's stuff that the script gets cut, then I film it, and then it gets cut on the editing floor because I'm just like, I mean, I would love to have put that in there, but length does become a factor. While I think for podcasting, whether it's 25 minutes or whether it's 35 minutes is perhaps less of a concern. And so that does it allows you to do a discussion or a video, whether it's video like this, essentially discussion format, podcast format. And it's good. There's plenty of room. Right, for both formats and both viewpoints, and I think that was one of my motivators. I didn't think that there were enough viewpoints, and I thought I had relevant things to add to the conversation, just like you guys have been doing for the last few years.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that. And I think the yeah, the podcast format is definitely longer format, and it's not so intensive as video editing, because with video you're editing the sound and the images, right?
Yeah.
Where for podcast it's really just audio. And Christopher and I actually hired an editor to do our podcast editing because we just don't have time to do it on our own. So to your credit that you're doing your own editing right now.
Yeah, I mean, the vision is to, of course, ramp up the content. So at the moment, I'm making it's been a video every 2 weeks. And I would love to get, again, in full disclosure, I'd love to get to a point where I'm making 2 videos a week. One video, which is more of this kind of like, topic based, whether, what is Japanese whiskey, can shochu become, a global phenomenon, what I mean, like a thought piece.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then maybe one video doing some tasting or introducing, this week's whiskey of the week, shochu of the week, and Nihonshu of the week. So, but having said that, then my heart, see, you can't see, oh my God, that is a full-time job. And so, obviously you have to think about whether editing ends up getting outsourced, but it's the entrepreneur's dilemma, right? For example, with my tours, the way my tour started getting built up to the point where come the middle of 2018, I was getting double booked. And fortunately, there's only one of me. So I needed other guides. And the first time, I said to people, look, I'm busy, but here's somebody who I trust and I've trained and, I vouch for. That first time, oh my God, I was just so scared to release this reins of control. So even now thinking about editing, do people understand kind of the humor, the pacing, the things I want to see? And the answer is almost certainly yes. It's more a psychological barrier. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah. No, our editor came very highly recommended, and we were starting fresh from the very beginning of the show. So he puts his own stamp on it. And with my background in filmmaking, the editor to me is just as creative as the director or the screenwriter or the actor, right? They're definitely part of the creative team.
And should be much more recognized, right? I mean, I think I heard a great quote from Scorsese's editor. She said, these films aren't violent until I get my hands on the footage, and it's absolutely right. Editing is massively undervalued as a skill. I think even in the Oscars, the way that it comes in the Oscars and stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's been in some of the film projects that I worked on back when I was living in New York. You'd have just this jumble of footage. You have this script. You've got all this B-roll. And you just look at all of it and you're like, I hope somebody can figure out what to do with this, because it's just all over the place. And then a good editor gets their hands on it and turns it into something. It just really elevates the project. So I guess that's my encouragement, that when you're ready for an editor, find a good one, and maybe you won't have anything to worry about.
Yeah, 100%. So actually, this is an open call. It's something I've been meaning to do, actually, just to start to test the waters. If anybody wants to edit or knows a good editor, then, and somebody who can also help me with some social media aspects of the other business as well, I'm looking for my first relatively employee. So
that's right.
We are helping to build the economy. Sorry, go on.
This has become a recruitment episode. I like it.
We want more people on this planet, the Shochu'sday Kanpai Planet. We want more inhabitants.
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of Kanpai Planet, I actually thought the branding for that was brilliant, because you're really trying to bring Kanpai to the planet. You're making you're a global brand, right? And you said that in retrospect, you would have branded Mac Salman Planet differently. Same for me with Kanpai.us. Yeah, because that automatically limits focus to America, which is where I was living at the time. So it kind of made sense, but I didn't think about it as a global effort to get the word out about these drinks. So definitely, and that's where I think the shift to Japan distilled has happened. It's no longer US focused, it's international, and it's focused on all Japanese spirits. And then you've actually gone a step broader with Kanpai Planet. You're actually doing all Japanese drinks, which I think is a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and it's probably lessons learned, right? You know, when you first start something, I mean, you know, you probably just went and bought, brilliant, Kanpai.us, it's available, you know, and like,
yeah, exactly.
And it's great. And, you know, what you're doing has evolved well, like what you were doing when you were based in New York compared to now with you know, your interests and your consulting and all the amazing stuff that you're doing as well, right, has changed. So, you know, for me, it's not just, you know, I want to explore a lot of issues. You know, there's Scottish and American distilleries aging stuff in, you know, Mizunara, right? There's the number of sake, you know, Nihonshu, sake distilleries is shrinking in Japan, unfortunately, right? But it's growing in Germany, right? Like,
sure.
So it's not, you know, this kind of global aspect is very, very important for me. And it's something that, I'm looking forward to exploring over the next few years.
Yeah, excited to see what you come up with. Now, but we have a problem. The problem is we're 35 minutes into this and we haven't had a drink.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, I've been. Yeah. Okay. What are you? I'm
on coffee.
What are you drinking?
I'm on coffee right now. But
yeah,
as I mentioned to you, I thought Omori Coffee might be a good option for today. So I got my coffee, and then this is Ryukyu Ocho. I picked this bottle up in a convenience store in Okinawa when I was down there earlier this month. This is available in the US. I'm gonna get the shad off my face. This is available in the US. I'm not sure. The packaging is different. It's in a frosted white bottle, and the label is a little bit different, but really, really nice awamori. And I've just been obsessed with awamori coffee, especially this month where I've given up beer and bread for the month of March. I have lost 1.5 kilograms, which is about almost 3.5 pounds. Thank you. So I'm going to drop a little bit of awamori in my coffee here. And now I've been drinking my awamori coffee as a beer replacement. So I've been taking my leftover coffee at the end of the day with some sparkling water and some awamori and getting it down to about a beer strength. But today I'm trying it in hot coffee. Well, as hot as the coffee can still be after 35 minutes of talking.
Right. So inspired by you. Yeah. Kanpai. Inspired by you, I am on similar, but with a variant. So I have a very sweet tooth. And I thought about this awamori coffee and I thought this is genius. And I thought, well, how can I give it a little twist? And I've done it by replacing the awamori with Kokuto.
Nice.
Shochu, which of course is, you know, I'm sure you can correct whether you want to use your term molasses or black sugar or brown sugar. That's your wheelhouse for now.
Sure.
Straight from Amami Oshima, and I have 2 small bottles of that. So one was finished for the first half of the episode, and I'll be adding a little bit more. Amamiing up that coffee, as it were.
Amami coffee. I like it.
All credit to the Irish.
Well, cheers to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kanpai. Yeah, so that if you can hold up the bottle again, that's Lento. Again, those in the States. This is available. It's in a blue bottle in the US. This is a popular vacuum distilled Kokuto Shochu from the Amami Islands, which obviously is the only place you can make Kokuto Shochu. And I think Christopher and I settled our disagreement about what to call Kokuto.
Yeah.
He likes to call it brown sugar. I like to call it black sugar. It's definitely not molasses.
Yeah.
But we've settled on Kokuto sugar.
Oh, nice.
I'm just going to use the Japanese, right? We call wasabi. We don't call it something root paste.
Absolutely right. And you know, it's funny because all of this reminds me of when I first moved here. The taxi drivers. Remember, right? The taxi drivers, but remember back, things were very different, right? 2006, 2007 was pre-tourism boom. It was a lot of English coming into the culture. It was pre a lot of foreigners moving to Japan as well. Not quite, you know, the 1990s, but still, you know, it was the days when if you saw another foreigner on the Yamanote or in a supermarket, you gave them a little nod and it was returned of acknowledgement. And the taxi driver.
Fukuoka
Yeah, exactly. There you go. If for an actually going to travel back in time to what 2006 Shibuya-ku was like, then head to live in Fukuoka. And the taxi drivers would say something like, okuni desu ka? Where are you from? What country are you from? Okuni desu ka? And okuni wa whatever. And I would say England. And David Beckham, who was still big back then. And then they all, I think, part of taxi driver training in Tokyo involved knowing questions to ask, gaijin who got in your cab. And they had these 10 questions, and depending on the length of the journey, they were able to get through 4 to 8 of them. So, do you know David Beckham? Do you know the Beatles? Do you know the Queen? What do you think of Japanese women? I'm sorry, that was them asking, not, and then they would ask, can you eat raw fish?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I remember being asked that question because I always thought everybody calls it sushi, and and then they would, they were asking me about my pastimes. Would they say, can you go into private room and sing songs accompanied by backing track with your friends with unlimited beer? I'm like, look, mate, we all call it karaoke or karaoke. So at some point, you just got to use the word that exists,
Sure. Yeah.
And listen, I'm a tour guide, but my entire livelihood is about sharing, some explaining, connecting Japanese culture and life in Tokyo with the rest of the world. And sometimes you have to do it, but I really try hard not to use the analogies, okonomiyaki, it's Japan's pancake, Okamoto Taro, the famous artist, he's Japan's Picasso, right? The sculpture, Asakura is Japan's Rodin. I mean, it's kind of, does anybody ever say like Picasso is France's Okamoto?
Right.
It's patronizing. It's really not very. I'm interested in your thoughts, but for me, it's just disrespectful. Much more so.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Before I answer, the taxi drivers ask about raw fish before Japanese women or karaoke in Fukuoka, so I think they have a slightly different list. The order is different, at least. But I think part of that comes from, because often it's Japanese doing it themselves, right? They're trying to use words that express that they think a foreigner is going to understand, because they don't expect Japanese words to be known overseas. Because almost to a person, when I talk to Japanese people about Japan's place in the world, they say, "Oh, we're just a small island nation. Nobody knows or cares about us," is the pervasive attitude. Ignoring the fact that they're one of the world's largest economies, one of the most developed countries, with all of these advantages from a culinary and artistic tradition and that sort of thing. So it's just the humility, the national humility is really, I think, part of that. They don't expect people to know the word sushi or karaoke or, any number of other things. And yet we all do, right? There's plenty of Japan that has exported, perhaps without Japanese people realizing it.
There's definitely a disconnect between the self-image and the reputation in the rest of the world, which maybe exists everywhere. I mean, I think the national zeitgeist of America is
America's different.
disconnected from also this image of it in the rest of the world. But I think, and we can go very deep. I mean, one of the things that I think this country could stand to do without is almost just be a little bit more confident about its place in the world. I think this kind of desire for external validation, the joy when something is declared a World Heritage Site here is kind of, for me, so strong. I mean, Mount Fuji is Mount Fuji, right? I mean, who cares? Yes, it's great. Okay, if it's a protectionist, if you're going for some biospheric designation, that means the area is going to be protected for things like biodiversity. That's fantastic. But recognition of it as World Heritage, I mean, are more people going to visit? I mean, that kind of, but looking for that validation and that recognition that's actually such a deep part of the human condition, of course. But it's interesting how it manifests in Japan, I think.
Well, and I've another unpaid Self-Promotion is actually, I really love the History of Japan podcast, which unfortunately he never talks about Japanese drinks history, which I wish he would. But Isaac Meyer has the History of Japan podcast. And through that, I've learned quite a bit about sort of how Japan has viewed itself over time. And there was an outright Western bias against Asians, right? Essentially, they were really considered the other, the outsiders for much of modern history until very recently. And I think because of that Western bias against Japan, against China, against Korea is part of why Japan seeks and craves that external validation. It wasn't even that long ago that the acceptance of Western civilization, Asian civilization, Eastern civilization in the West began to take root. If we're talking historically speaking, it's a relatively recent phenomenon.
Yeah, 100%.
So that maybe these attitudes will change over time. Perhaps the Japanese will become a little less craving of external validation as they realize that we're in a single planet, a Kanpai planet.
Yes. I mean, it's a subject very dear to my heart. And one of the things that was very important for me when, starting Kanpai Planet is I wanted a little bit more of kind of my viewpoint and my personality to sort of shine through in some of the things and also to touch on some things which are difficult. I've tried already. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm talking about, whiskey, right?
Sure.
But, when we talk about, say, social terroir, again, whether that's the right term or human terroir, people like Akuto Ichiro saying, Japanese whiskey is whiskey made by Japanese people. Well, got to define what a Japanese person is, and I think that's something that we're going to see changing a lot over the next 10, 15 years with great now really important public figures like, Naomi Osaka, kind of challenging what it means. And as a foreigner living here for 15 years, of course, I'm not Japanese, right? But I'm from I'm from Tokyo. I mean, I represent Tokyo. This is my home. My roots are in this city. I pay more tax here than than most Japanese people, right? So, for me, it's kind of very, very interesting times to be part of the dialogue about about this incredible country.
Yeah, and I'm only in my third year in Fukuoka, so I still feel like a guest. That I'm a visitor. I don't have any plans to move back to the States, but it's so fresh. I'm still learning the language, still learning to read, trying to become literate.
It's a never-ending, the never-ending battle. I mean, super tough challenge, but it's very rewarding at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's coming up for Kanpai Planet? You want to tease us with any future topics?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's look back at kind of the main content that's out there. Like I say, primarily the videos, and then Twitter is probably then the secondary outlet. So if you want to, any of you, that's probably the most important thing, I think. Twitter.com/Kanpai Planet to kind of fill the gaps and to find out a bit of news about what's going on in the drink space. So my first video was about the Foo Fighters sake. So not a joke. The Foo Fighters, that famous band, have released a collaboration Nihonshu, a collaboration sake with a brewery called Tatenokawa, who are based up in Sakata in Yamagata prefecture. And that was an interesting one. That was kind of a statement of intent, that video. If you watch that, then you will understand kind of the nature of what I want to do. Because it wasn't enough for me just to, take a sniff and to say, smells of lychee and banana, which, let's be honest, most Nihonshu does. And the other one, look at this. And I needed to go deep into the background, where this collaboration come from, who are these guys who are doing the collaboration, the type of rice. Okay, you say to somebody, oh, this is made with 100% omachi rice, right? Well, that just means nothing to somebody watching, unless but how to make that concise, how to tell them this is kind of the true pure rice strain, but without making it boring, making it entertaining. So that was good. And then, of course, these new Japanese whiskey standards hit, and I think all of us who wanted to be relevant and wanted to be part of the discussion had to pivot. And actually, I would, again, this is for people out there who maybe are thinking about starting their own ways, and the more the merrier, please, if you think you have something to contribute to the conversation, nothing would make us happier than you guys going out there and creating your content and sharing it. One of the things you're told when you're starting a YouTube channel is to start niche. I don't know, you maybe have encountered this, start niche. Maybe you experienced it a bit with sort of Kanpai.us and then kind of growing from there. Start niche and then grow.
Yep. And
one of the things that has kind of maybe plagued the Mac Salman Planet YouTube is that, 1 week I'm putting out a video about Super Nintendo World, which, by the way, is just sort of coming up to 250,000 views on that. The next week, literally the very next week, I'm putting out a video on Japanese mascots. You would have thought there was a small amount of overlap, 350 views. So, right, 250,000 to 350. So they say start niche. So I was originally thinking about doing only Japanese whiskey content. That was the original vision. And then I can't do it. My interests are so diverse. I, in good conscience, couldn't just create Japanese whiskey content. And so, the smallest niche I could kind of enter was, Japan's drinks.
Yeah.
So the whiskey stuff is very relevant to kind of my original vision for the channel anyway. And there are 3 whiskey videos out there. The first one was an overview of these new Japanese whiskey standards. I know you guys have created some fantastic content about that. The second video was called What is Japanese Whiskey? And that was because I've been thinking about these things for a long time, what terroir and, and what does terroir actually mean? And why are people so bloody bothered about this kind of nationalist protectionism anyway, and all of this stuff is very close to my heart. Last year, I'd written a lot of thought pieces about being a global citizen. So it seemed a very natural video to make. And then the third video is one that actually some people who started watching my content, some big, what was known as whiskey tube, some whiskey tubers actually, contacted me and said, hey, Matt, I think you should make a video about how to pronounce Japanese whiskey names.
Yep.
And that was a lot of work, but it seems to have done well and proven to be pretty popular.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason our first podcast episode was a pronunciation guide to Shochu and Aomori.
Yeah.
Because these aren't easy words for the unfamiliar.
They're not, and they're not easy words. The fact I produced this episode does not mean that for the rest of time on my videos, I will be saying, akadama and, or suntory as opposed to suntory, right? I mean, that's the thing, the word in English for going into a private box with your friends and having a backing track and singing along with unlimited beer at the end of the phone is karaoke, typically, the word is not karaoke, And
right.
The word in Japanese for Starbucks is not Starbucks. It's, Starbucks, right? Language changes, language evolves. And the thing about English and Japanese is they are here. Let's see where my shot is, as far apart as my screen can allow me to put my hands. The cadence of the language is different. If you want to say a Japanese word, fluently in the middle of an English sentence, it's incredibly difficult because the way that you're talking, it has a different pace. I experience the same thing. I speak Arabic as well. And it's very common for people who speak, fluent English and fluent Arabic to actually mix the two languages together. And it requires kind of full knowledge of both language because you never know which word the other person's going to switch in an Arabic. But, depending on the pacing of your sentence, you're going to be Arabizing some English words, and you're going to be Anglicizing some Arabic words. So it's completely fine. But it is good to know how to say, Miyagi-kyo, correctly, and not Miyagi-kyo or whatever. And at least to start from this base and to work backwards from there, rather than starting down here and work backwards.
Sure.
So that actually didn't answer your question. Your question is what the future is. And I've got a few ideas. There's going to be another pronunciation video at some point, looking at some of the smaller distilleries and less well-known brands. The first one focused on Suntory and Nikka.
Was that paid content?
Believe me, the price that those guys are charging for their whiskey now, they do not need any help.
That's right.
From me. And I want to touch on Japanese wine. That's going to be one coming up. There Japanese is very deliberate. I mean, you see this everywhere, but if you look at a bottle of Hibiki, for example, right, the design is incredibly deliberate, and there's going to be a video coming up about kind of hidden secrets of Japanese bottle design. Even like comparing the colors, of Yamazaki to a Hakushu, the bottles and the things there. I think that's going to be quite interesting for people. And then, I have so many ideas that the limiting step at the moment is the time it takes to craft a good, entertaining 10-minute video. And I want to do some collaborations, both with people like yourselves and overseas content creators as well. And I think that's something, that there hasn't been on YouTube kind of a lot Japan originated content that has become popular and become, a voice alongside, say, if you look at, say, Whiskey Tribe in the US or Aqua Vitae in Scotland, or No Nonsense Whiskey in England. There hasn't been a Japan originated voice, and that is something that I'd like to be. But hard work to get everything out here on the channel.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Our podcast explorations very similar. There's so many things we want to talk about, but it's and not nearly as much work to make, I think, but the time to script it, talk through, brainstorm, because I usually do the scripting.
Yeah.
Then Christopher and I talk through it, make changes to the script. And the script's very light. It's bullet points of things we want to touch on, and who's going to talk about which, and then and then we go record, and then Rich Pav does an amazing job with the editing. And then we're out. But we've got a list of 50 other episodes we want to do, and which one to release when is also a challenge, right? When to
exactly. And then that's an interesting thing, if I could make a video every day, like the Whiskey Tribe do in the US, would I even want to do that, or do the viewership even want to do that? Consumption of different types of content is there. You've got to think about a lot of different things. And is a video or a podcast even the correct way to do it, when maybe a tweet, or a tweet or a tweet thread will do.
Yep. Yeah, and you had mentioned earlier how you got the video out on the whiskey labeling standards, and Christopher and I had recorded that podcast, but we didn't release it. We didn't feel like we were ready for emergency podcasts, but that was about as close to breaking news as you can get in the Japanese drinks world. And so we actually regretted not dropping that episode faster.
Yeah, because same here with my video. Just saying, my video came out a week later, and there was the psychological block. They came out, and I'm like, I should probably do something about this. But it's that inertia, right?
Sure.
To get yourself in, to stop kind of some of the ideas that were in free flow that are now going to be released, in a few months' time, to then come and work on this. And it's such a hotbed subject. You want to make sure you get your information right as well, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's this has been a fun conversation. We're coming up on an hour. And Christopher absolutely demands that everything we do takes less than an hour. So even though he's not on today, I figure we'll try to stick with that schedule. But this was a lot of fun. We'll definitely have to have you on again when Christopher and I both can be here. That's the nice thing about StreamYard. We can have up to 10 people at a time.
Fantastic.
In a discussion. So you can make it a regular group discussion, which I think would be a lot of fun. And really look forward to being able to catch up with you again next time I'm in Tokyo, or if you make it to Fukuoka. We're overdue for a Kanpai.
Yeah, 100%. I've actually started working a little bit with Kyushu, like pan-prefectural tourism body. And obviously you've got some good whiskey distilleries down there, as well as the indigenous shochu. So I'm looking forward to it. As soon as we can make it happen, let's do it. Thanks, thanks for inviting me on. It's been a real honor, and looking forward to doing more of these in future.
Yeah, really appreciate you coming on the show. And to everyone listening, I hope you've enjoyed this discussion with Mac from Kanpai Planet and Maction Planet. For those overseas coming inbound, once travel is allowed, we know a good tour guide. And in Tokyo, probably a great tour guide in Tokyo. And check out his videos on Kanpai Planet on YouTube. And then obviously you can interact with him on Twitter. He's always giving great information about Japanese drinks, and really excited to see what he comes up with in the very near future. And with that, I don't do this nearly as well as Christopher, but to all of you out there, we wish you a very hearty and heartfelt Kanpai.
Kanpai.